Rand Paul went on Fox News to slam the stimulus bill. Let's see what he had to say.
Our next guest lighting up the Senate floor just before lawmakers voted on the $900 billion stimulus bill. Senator Rand Paul blasted his fellow Republicans as no better than socialist in his now viral speech. Watch.
This bill is free money for everyone. Maybe these new free money Republicans should join the Everybody Gets a Guaranteed Income caucus. To so-called conservatives who are quick to identify the socialism of Democrats, if you vote for this spending monstrosity, you are no better.
Now, with more is the Republican senator from Kentucky, Senator Rand Paul. Senator, Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for being here with us. A lot of people, absolutely, good morning. A lot of people loved what you had to say on the Senate floor. React to the recent developments, because it's been exposed how much pork is in this. When you tie an omnibus to an emergency bill like COVID-19, everyone throws their prerogatives of Washington into the bill. Is there a way in which, if some of that was stripped out, you could support one-time additional payments to individuals beyond 600, or is it both that you object to, sir?
You know, it'd be great if there were actually that alternative. If they said, oh, we'll quit spending money on selfies to see if selfies make you happy, or we'll quit sending money on the mating call of Panamanian frogs. But guess what? They never do that. They always add it. No one ever takes away any spending. That's my big gripe. It is, of course, Festivus, so I can tell you why I'm unhappy with all these jokers. The thing is they never take away wasteful spending. They only add more to it. And the bottom line is the only way we recover as economy is we've got to open the economy up. Unemployment is actually lower than it was during most of President Obama's term. So we really can recover, but we got to get these governors out of the way of our restaurants and our bars and our venues. We got to get the economy opened up. Is the only way we survive this. And most working Americans don't need a check right now. It's a really foolish, egg-headed, left-wing socialist idea to pass out free money to people. So I part ways with the president on giving people free money. We should help those who are unemployed by extending unemployment, but we shouldn't add to unemployment. There are things we can do. Look, in 2008, President Obama extended unemployment. They didn't juice it up by giving people more money not to work than they work. So we've done a lot of terrible ideas that are much worse than what we criticized President Obama. President Obama is now a conservative when it comes to stimulus, because his unemployment didn't juice it up. He just extended it. We didn't give cash payments back then, but the cash payments is a ridiculous, terrible, foolish, no good idea because you're just printing out money to give to people.
See, Rand's problem, and honestly, this is a deeply unserious position and silly position, but his problem is that he conflates all kinds of government spending. See, to Rand, big government is bad, full stop. And so if you talk about building a bridge in Ohio versus blowing up a bridge in Kandahar, to him, he's, hey, it's the same. It costs money. Government spending is not a good thing. So I'm not in favor of either one of those things. And this is what people who are libertarian or libertarian leaning, this is part and parcel of their ideology. They think big government is bad, full stop. And so when you come up with a solution that involves the government, they're against it in principle. And I respect it a lot more if they admit that it's an argument from principle. So in other words, it's not about, empirical evidence or reality or what works or doesn't work. It's about, no, I just believe this as a matter of principle. If you admit that, okay, then I disagree with you, but we got no beef because at least you're honest about it. But what Rand tries to do is also pretend like, the evidence matches his ideology and his worldview as if, government spending is like objectively bad. He says, he rails against, quote, free money for everyone. And understand, guys, there are some libertarians, probably in the minority here, to be fair, but like Milton Friedman was interestingly for a version of universal basic income. Now, in the libertarian conception, they want to replace the social safety net, replace the welfare state, and only do the UBI. So that's why it's something that some of them support, because at least you're reducing the size of the bureaucracy. But what I would say to Rand is, why don't you just look at this like it's a tax cut? If somebody net pays more than $600 in taxes, and then the government cuts them a $600 check, why are you so stuck on the fact that we're calling it a subsidy or we're calling it a stimulus check when you could just as easily say, hey, view it like a tax cut? And it's so funny because if that argument were to click with him, he would immediately flip on it. He'd be like, oh yeah, I love tax cuts. Tax cuts are good by definition. So now I'm for it. But if you call it a stimulus check or if you call it a subsidy, then he's like, oh no, that's big government. Big government spending is bad. So I'm against it now. Again, it's really, really silly. And by the way, I never want to hear a single word about, and this is one of the talking points he always goes back to. He didn't do it in this clip, but he always does it, where he talks about adding to the debt and the deficit. We can't afford this. Our children and our children's children can't afford this. Rand voted for the 2017 Republican tax cut bill. 83% of the benefits of that bill went to the top 1%, and it added nearly $2 trillion to the deficit. So he's fine with deficit spending when it's for tax cuts for the wealthy. Okay, he's just not for it when it's for a nominal stimulus check for people during a new Great Depression. And then he argues, this is another standard right-wing argument now, we should open up the economy. And my response to him is, there's still a pandemic, Rand. It's not like if you fully open up the economy everywhere that all of a sudden the economy is going to bounce back and be roaring and be in great shape. No, until you get the virus under control, of course the economy is going to lag because not as many people are going to participate in various aspects of the economy until the virus is gone. So that's not a solution. He brings it up as if it's like, why don't we just open everything up and then everything will be great? Okay, but then what are you going to do about the virus? Like, that needs to be under control for the economy to really bounce back. He also says, quote, most working Americans don't need a check right now. Really? Really? I don't know, man. I'd check in with them because guess what? There are plenty of people who still have jobs, but they got their hours cut back or they got their pay cut or they're working a gig economy job and business has plummeted. Plenty of people with jobs who are really, really, really struggling right now. In fact, most of the people I know who I've talked to about this say, yeah, I got a pay cut. So, no, most Americans who are working, I would argue, probably do need a check. By the way, who doesn't, right? Like maybe the top 5% of the country is like, okay, I'm fine. But 95% are like, Jesus Christ, I need all the help I can get. I mean, we've seen the numbers. The numbers are absolutely devastating and they're scary. 60% of small businesses that closed are permanently closed. 28 million people on the brink of foreclosure. 30% of the population couldn't pay rent, and that was as of 3, 4, 5 months ago, something like that. We're in trouble, man. We're absolutely in trouble. But he says most working Americans don't need a check. And I like his final point. Obama's a conservative when it comes to stimulus. Hey, you finally got it. We've been saying that for a long time. Not just when it comes to stimulus, when it comes to this whole ideology. I've called Barack Obama the most successful Republican president of all time in U.S. history. You could say Lincoln actually was a little bit better, but one of the most successful Republican presidents of all time. Why do I say that? Just look at his ideology. Look at what he pushed for. Look at what he signed into law. This isn't rocket science, ladies and gentlemen. Barack Obama signed, what was it, like over a dozen tax cuts? So if you're a Republican, you should like this. He made like 90% of the Bush tax cuts permanent, and that was for people, who are middle class and below. That's what Barack Obama did. Barack Obama signed Romney Care. Obamacare is Romney Care, and Romney Care is from the Heritage Foundation, and Newt Gingrich used to support it, and Chuck Grassley used to support it. It was a Republican health care bill. Signed a Republican health care bill, repeatedly signed tax cuts into law. This is a guy who was relatively hawkish, something that many Republicans like Rand Paul wouldn't, to be fair. He's more libertarian, and they tend to be more anti-interventionist. There were a few years where he reduced the deficit massively, even during a recession. These guys supposedly love reducing the deficit. They say they do. So I could go point for point, policy for policy, and show you how, in many ways, Barack Obama was a very successful moderate Republican president. So he finally gets it. He said, Obama is a conservative when it comes to stimulus. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. But it's interesting, too, because at first, if you watch this entire interview, you only saw a little piece of it there. You saw some from the beginning and some from the end. But if you watch the entire interview, he starts out acting like he's against the wasteful pork spending and acts like that's the problem with this relief bill. And then by the end, he's asked flat out if he supports any direct payments to people. And he's basically like, no, I don't support that either. So notice the Weasley move he did there. He knows that the direct checks are very popular. 88% was the last poll I saw. 88% of the American people want more direct checks. He knows that part is really popular. So he positions himself as just against the pork spending. And then by the end, when he's asked flat out, he's like, yeah, I don't really support those either. Free money for everybody. That's a terrible idea. Something socialism. So it's very Weasley. Because there was also another part of the interview where he tried to align himself with Trump, but Trump was for the $2,000 checks, and you're against those too. So he's trying to lead with the thing that's more palatable, but then ultimately he ends up saying what he's really for, which is he doesn't want any sort of stimulus bill at all, period. That's who Rand Paul is. That's what, libertarian-leaning economics will get you. It's honestly the last thing you want to do when you hit an economic downturn. The last thing you want is austerity. You do not want austerity. That's only going to exacerbate the problem. And that's exactly what Rand Paul's in favor of. Because, his devotion to what he views as the free market is absolute. It's like a religious belief. It's like a fundamentalist belief. He's a free market fundamentalist in many ways. So, not the guy you want in charge when there's an economic downturn. That's for damn sure.